Good afternoon. I'm actually doing the show from Champion, Wisconsin, and this is the Catholic Champion Show. So we got a special slate on the show today. I'm your host, John Yep, co-host Michael Hichborn. Stay tuned. We're going to be talking about updates on where the Pope was for the 4th of July, what I was doing here in Champion, Wisconsin, where Our Lady appeared. And if you stick around for a bonus, we'll give you a quick rundown on the Charlie Kirk update and the trial, what's going on there. Stay tuned. Where were you on the 4th of July? How did you celebrate it? Where you celebrated and how kind of shows a lot about where we are in this country, and different people celebrated in different ways. We obviously had the massive celebration of fireworks there in DC. Michael, did you go to that by chance?
No, are you kidding? DC is over 2 hours away for us anyway, but there would have been no parking. I've got, 8 kids. There's just no way.
My sister and their family, they actually went down there. They have a slew of kids too, and they braved the heat, and they said it was one of the best fireworks shows they've ever seen. So with the flyovers from the B-2 bombers, etc. So part of me wishes that I was there, though the whole crowd situation, I've done enough crowds in my time with 5 years in Rome. So if I could avoid crowds, I will.
Yep.
The Holy Father, starting with the Pope, okay? The Pope is obviously the first American Pope. We get that question a lot. I think I did an interview with the Washington Post about 2 weeks ago, and they asked me, do you think that the Pope is downplaying his nationality too much? Is he he's going to go to Lampedusa? What do you think about that, right? Let's just hear, just before anything else, what he had to say, his kind of official address that he gave to the United States. This came on the context he received the prestigious Liberty Medal from the U.S. National Constitution Center for his lifelong commitment to promoting religious liberty and freedom of conscience and expression around the world. So the Pope received that award, and he gave an address on the eve of the 250th anniversary. Let's play a couple minutes from the Holy Father's speech.
Home of the brave. First right enshrined by the nation's founders was the right to life. For no one who is deprived of life can enjoy liberty or pursue happiness. A country's vitality is deeply tied to the value it affords to human life in every form and condition, acknowledging the dignity endowed upon every human person by virtue of their very existence. The inherent worth of every human life has led the noble hearts of generations to praise the marvelous works of the Creator and stand in reverence before so precious a gift. Indeed, it is precisely this reverence that we must continue to cultivate, one that sways the hearts of individuals and inspires laws that recognize and safeguard the gift from the moment of conception to natural death. Reverence, too, will aid us in discovering that we are guardians and stewards of those entrusted to our care. In this regard, the moral greatness of a nation is manifested, above all, in its capacity to support, protect, and cherish the lives of all, especially the most vulnerable and those whose worth is questioned.
We can get a cut it there.
The right to life,
so,
liberty.
Obviously, we're grateful for the Holy Father for speaking up, and it's still special for me to think about we have an American Pope. Of course, that's was not expected in many ways. It's rare in some ways that you have a Pope from the world's reigning superpower. But the Pope did, so he gave that speech on the eve of the anniversary of our founding on July 4th, and then on the actual day, Pope Leo traveled to the tiny Italian island of Lampedusa, laying a wreath at the graves of migrants who drowned trying to reach Europe, and celebrating an open-air mass of what he called on Catholics to be good Samaritans, offering compassion to those who suffer, attempting to make the perilous journey by sea. I have not come to give speeches, but to celebrate the Eucharist, the supreme sign of Christ's presence among us, he said. Jesus' gesture of breaking bread to give himself gives meaning and strength to our daily acts of assistance and sharing. First comments, thoughts on that, Michael, as you, with the Holy Father's action of going to visit this island?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the indignity that comes from receiving a secular award. For the papacy to accept a secular award, it is indignant because the papacy it represents the supreme authority in the world over secular and religious institutes. This is not just a symbolic thing. If you even look at the image of Pope Leo standing there with the medal around his neck, what was it doing? It was pushing aside the cross that was also hanging from his neck. This is indignant. This is not something that should be. And I strongly disagree with the Pope accepting a secular honor like this. It's beneath him. It's beneath the papacy. But, what comes to mind also is that here we have, he gives some lovely words about the pro-life movement and standing up for life and defending life. And that's perfect. That's great. But at the same time, he does the seamless garment thing where he equates it in an indirect manner, but he does put it together with, accepting migrants into your own country, which if he wants to talk about migration policy, he really ought to be specific instead of just saying, well, you're not accepting of migrants. Well, what does that even mean? What does it mean to go after and chastise the United States for not being accepting of migrants when we have one of the largest immigration acceptance policies in the entire world? So don't chastise us for being non-accepting of migrants. We are scrutinizing, which is the right of the state to do. We should be, having some sort of degree of scrutiny when it comes to who comes into this country. We don't want criminals. We don't want terrorists. We don't want, secret agents from foreign countries that are trying to undermine the secular authority of the state. But to chastise us for quote unquote not being accepting or not being accepting enough, if you're not going to give specifics, then stop talking.
He got this award. That's an excellent point, by the way, about his receiving a secular award. Never really thought about it like that. It's obviously his fellow bishops around the world, especially, they took note and they made a point in actually here in the U.S. of following his kind of nod toward what we might deem illegal migration. And they went to the border and they had a rosary procession, which was, we'll talk about that in a second. But the Pope going to Lampedusa, why there? That's significant in and of itself. It is a symbol of a lot of the African migrants who just had made, yes, a perilous journey across the Mediterranean Ocean or sea to get to Europe. Many of them enter illegally. But I think here's the problem. And a reporter actually asked me that. He said, look, on the actual 4th of July, there's going to be a split screen moment. You're going to see the Pope, as you see right there, going to this, laying the wreath down. And then you're going to see the fireworks in D.C., all of us here in the United States. It's a split screen. And they asked me, what do I think about that? My response was, wouldn't it be better, instead of going to the island of Lampedusa, why don't you go to the island, Ellis Island? Ellis Island is a symbol of legal migration, right? As opposed to Lampedusa. Yes, of course, our heart goes out to those people there, but Europe is being completely overrun by migration, specifically the Muslims, right? And we hear very little chatter about that from Rome. Yes, both Pope Francis and Pope Leo have frequently, thanks be to God, talked about the low birth numbers in Europe, and there's going to be a replacement. 100% there is, absolutely. But also, even perhaps more urgent, is this overrunning of Western Europe specifically with illegal migration. We're losing our church. I think I just saw an X this morning as well. Another church in France, Bordeaux, I believe, in the town of Bordeaux, went up in flames mysteriously. All right. It's like logic tells you it's probably caused by followers of Muhammad. I'm just hypothesizing, have definitive proof, but it makes a lot of sense since they have a vicious hatred towards all things Christian. Okay. So it'd be nice if the Holy Father speak up on that, right?
Well, absolutely. Again, the problem is the refusal to speak with specifics. If the Pope wants to say that there's a problem because migrants are dying on their way to try and get into a certain country, well, then point out exactly what the problem is. Is it because the country is refusing to allow people to come in, or is it because the country has a legal process that these others are trying to circumvent? And if that's the problem, stop putting the impetus and the onus on the country that is, putting up a border and making sure that people are coming through proper ports of entry, and start putting the onus on those who are aiding and abetting them trying to come into the country illegally. And that's really kind of the essence of the problem. There is no specificity, but all of the blame is being placed on the country that is putting up a process that says, here's the legal way to come in, here's the legal process. And again, I take very serious issue with imprecise language.
Going to the United States here again, some of our local bishops followed the Holy Father's lead, and they made a point. It's the title of the article: "Open Borders: Bishops Hijack America's 250th Anniversary to Advocate for Illegal Aliens." Just before the U.S. celebrates its anniversary, 5 of the Southwest Catholic bishops led a rosary and procession through Ambos, Nogales on Friday evening, calling for compassionate treatment for migrants and comprehensive immigration reform. So there's, including my own local ordinary, Bishop John Dolan. The faith leaders gathered at Sacred Heart Catholic Church within view of the U.S.-Mexico border and held a pastoral conversation followed by a mass. We call ourselves Christians. To be called Christian means to be like Christ, to be living a life that's conformed to Christ as possible. Okay, I agree with that. That was from Bishop Jason Misko of Tucson. And we know that justice is being in right relationship with God and one another. We have to listen to people, blah, 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 blah. As we mark the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, we are reminded that we are made by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. Okay, this is by Bishop Mark Seitz, who's extremely close to Pope Leo. They're given by God. That is a fundamental reality, and we in the church always have in mind that no policy, no executive order of the Supreme Court, this isn't going to take that away. Okay, they're making a point. Obviously, they're going to the border. Talk about seamless garment, actually, like in full view here. These bishops, almost for sure, and is that Bishop Wester from Santa Fe? Almost for sure.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Covered quite frequently. He's one of the leading proponents of this homosexual agenda in the Catholic Church, specifically the United States. Okay, so those 4 bishops, they're out there now. They're marching. They're taking like action in society, but you will probably never see them ever outside of an abortion clinic leading a rosary. Okay, so it's just a total flip. Like it's, the same thing with Weisenberg, right? In Detroit, Archbishop Weisenberg, he goes to Detroit. One of his first actions, apart from firing some of the top professors at Sacred Heart Seminary, was to go march in an ICE detention center, right? And then he also, of course, went to a mosque just recently and gave a glowing speech about Islam, okay? But he will never go to the preeminent issue, which the bishops teach, which is life and defense of the unborn, okay? So total just like flip-flopping there, and I think we got to keep just pushing. I mean, it's a total mess. We say it all the time. What's going on here in this country is a mess with the migrants that have come in. We knew this would be a problem. That's why we advocated all throughout the Biden administration, said this warning, open borders, this will be disaster. What are we going to do? And of course, all of our church leaders were quiet as they took in millions from federal funding. So anyway, that's how some of our church leaders celebrated the anniversary of the country.
Let's add to this. Add to this real quick. The bishops have said repeatedly, and I would actually indicate several of the bishops, Bishop Kikanis, Bishop Wester, Bishop Dolan, have said that they're not going to refuse Holy Communion to pro-abortion politicians because they don't want to politicize the Eucharist. But what are they doing when they go and they hold a mass for migrants, and then they go and participate in a march saying that the immigration policies in the United States are unjust? They are, in their very actions, politicizing the Eucharist and politicizing in the real sense. When it comes to denying Holy Communion to pro-abortion politicians, they're not politicizing the Eucharist. What they're doing is they're saying, you, Catholic senator, bishop, or Catholic politician, whoever you are, because of your promotion of abortion, have placed yourself under the interdict indicated in Canon 915 of the Canon Law of the Catholic Church. And when you do that, you are to be denied Holy Communion because you are committing a grave manifest sin. But that's not politics. That's morality and that's church law. But then they turn around, they hold this mass and they participate in this political march that has nothing to do with morality and everything to do with politics. So they themselves are guilty of what they accuse others of being guilty of, and that's politicizing the Eucharist, politicizing our Lord.
Credit to, I fully agree there, and I think that's we just have to continue to just address that, call it out, just and also back up the bishops and other church leaders who are trying to highlight the full gamut, the full beauty of our Catholic faith as we live it out. Credit to Pope Leo for making this unprecedented visit on the evening of the 4th of July. Pope Leo marked the evening with an extraordinary and historic gesture of friendship towards the U.S., joining the U.S. ambassador to the Holy See, Brian Birch, and his family for a celebratory independence dinner at the ambassador's residence in Rome. We should try to get some of those pictures on the screen for people to see. Because it's never happened before. The Pope has never really gone to an actual residence of an ambassador, and he did so. The dinner took place only hours after the Holy Father went to Lampedusa. The timing gave the day unusual symbolic weight. The first American Pope spent the morning drawing attention to the dignity of migrants, and the evening honoring the country of its birth as it celebrated 250 years. Dinner was held in the residence dining room where the table was decorated red, white, and blue centerpieces and American flags. Can you imagine that's Brian Birch? Obviously, I know Brian's the former head of Catholic Vote. Just getting a call that the Pope's going to be coming over, and you got, that's just family right there. So imagine having to tell, wife and kids, hey, get ready, the Pope's coming over for dinner for the 4th of July barbecue. I can only imagine what a grace that was. Apart from whatever your opinion might be about Pope Leo and this, he says you have to do this better, that, whatever. He's the vicar of Christ. So you have the vicar of Christ coming over to your house. Okay. That's very special. After dinner, Pope Leo and Ambassador Birch spent time together in the garden of Villa Richardson, the 19th century residence situated on Rome's Janiculum Hill, one of the city's most historically significant overlooks. Just right there. Can you imagine being on that sofa right there, Michael? Like trying to have a conversation. Like, what do you talk about? Right. It's
right.
It's July barbecue, maybe like sparklers outside afterwards, or
you talk about SSPX. That's what you talk about.
maybe you talk about SSPX. I don't know. I would love to know what they spoke about. The visit was unprecedented. It was the first known visit by a pope to the residence of a foreign ambassador accredited to the Holy See. In fact, alone makes it remarkable. But the coming on the 4th of July in the middle of America's semi-quincentennial year, this gesture carried an unmistakable message. Pope Leo, while fully occupying the universal mission of the papacy, chose to show public warmth toward his homeland at a moment when the United States is reflecting on its founding ideals role in the world. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, very cool. I mean, it's always an honor to have the highest seat in the church visit you in your current residence. So that's it's definitely special. I mean, as a child, I would be on the moon.
So you see right there, the kids are actually in the picture. Like, imagine, like, I wonder if he brought all of his younger kids. I don't know how young they go, but you have kids, and just like, imagine if you're the mom trying to like keep all your kids quiet on the couch while the Pope is there. It's just anyway. It just brings you see, I guess Brian's obviously presenting a World Cup jersey of the United States to the Holy Father. That's one point too. Like, I think the Pope was actually going for his home country. He was not going for the United States in the World Cup. I mean, personally, I think it's taking it too far. I mean, we know you worked over there as a missionary, but at least like root for your home team in the World Cup, which the U.S. lost. By the way, Michael, did you watching the World Cup at all? You see that?
Nope. I have no interest in soccer whatsoever.
I was in seminary. I lived in Europe for 5 years, so I got very accustomed to soccer. And every 4 years, I'll especially tune in and watch the United States World Cup. They did fantastic, except in their like horrible loss to Belgium. Did you hear though about how Trump's administration interceded right before our last match? Did you hear about this? So
heard something about it, but I have no idea what it means. I don't understand soccer at all. I don't know the rules or anything. So
our top guy gets kicked out. Okay. Throw a picture of Balogun on the screen if you have it there. So Balogun gets kicked out in the last match against Bosnia. Okay. So he was going to be suspended for 2 games. Okay. Or just 1 game. And he was going to miss the most important game against Belgium. And the Trump administration, specifically Howard Lutnick, U.S. Commerce Secretary, advocates or goes to Trump, says, President Trump, you got to use your powers. So Trump calls the head of FIFA World Cup, the head of the league, and basically says, hey, that rule was unjust. So Trump in the United States, we flexed our muscle, got this individual who's actually a great guy. He's a believer, might even be Catholic, okay?
He's got a rosary around his neck.
Yep, exactly. Gets him back in the game, which again, I'm actually against that. I think the Trump administration was a total flex muscle. Like if I was on the opposing team and the world superpower basically used their political weight to get a top player back after he was already suspended, and it never really happens. You don't get like a suspension revoked or reversed. But it is what it is. He went back in, and the United States was crushed anyways to Belgium 4-1. But I'm over the loss. I moved on, and we'll see who wins the final World Cup. So, and then you wake me up in 4 years, and we'll watch it again. But okay. Let's go with the last person. So I want to highlight to you about where they were on the 4th of July. You got Mayor Zoran Mamdani. Okay, he just won. Remember, he's the mayor of New York City. I think what's going on there is just like it should be a red light warning for all of us around the country. We have a serious invasion right now of just a philosophy. Is it? Can you even call it a religion? It's a religion of sorts, right? Is Islam a religion?
Islam, yeah, well, it's an anti-religion is what it is. It's a heresy according to the Catholic Church, but it's an anti-religion because the only true religion recognized by the Catholic Church is the Catholic Church, and right. Islam is the opposite of Catholicism. If you look at their symbols, you look at their practices. We have the Bible, they have the Quran. We have rosary, they've got prayer beads. We have habits, religious habits, they've got hijabs. You know, everything that they have picked Lent, up.
They have Ramadan.
That's right. That's right. So they have they've mirrored the Catholic Church, but it's the opposite. And instead of God the Father, they have God the slave owner. So it's not a religion, it's an anti-religion, but it's also a political system. It's Islamic countries, they've got theocracies when they have the Islamic rulers in power. So their ideologies become their political policies.
And there has been a specific merger between Islam and neo-Marxism, as we see perfectly incarnated right now in Mayor Mamdani and what he's doing in New York City, the Big Apple, like the pride of American cities. So anyway, his wife, Mamdani's wife skips America's 250th anniversary for Islamic spiritual wellness retreat in Spain. Here's the story. Rama Duwaji, wife of the mayor, faced criticism over her 4th of July weekend after she reportedly traveled to Spain for Islamic spiritual wellness retreat while New York celebrated the anniversary. Nothing says America 250 quite like skipping the celebration for a Mediterranean vacation, but I'm not surprised because she has made her hatred for America very evident, Councilwoman Joanne Ariola told the Post. Another councilman, Frank Morano, also criticized her actions, saying they can take trips, but should recognize the importance of the milestone. What do you make of that, Michael?
Well, I mean, what can you make of it? You have somebody who's supposed to be the significant other of, the leader of the most prominent city in the United States, and she decides to skip town during the nation's largest celebration of its self in recent history. So she's made a statement, and she made her statement very clear. And I think that the assertion that she hated this country, that she has made it clear she hates this country, is well put. But for her to participate in an Islamic retreat while the country is celebrating its 250th birthday, and having her husband actually representing the city of New York, which was attacked by Muslims, I think is very clear that she has made her allegiances known. And through her, I would assert her husband as well.
And that's what the cause of the reaction, rightly so. I mean, I think it was again, this is a sign. These are the people who are in power right now. They genuinely do not love this country, okay? And they're making it very clear, very open to the public. coming up that this action, the New York Post actually reached out to me yesterday, and we were doing an interview, and they wanted me to do literally the question was, because the retreat that Rama is going on, it's a retreat, weirdly, it's for women, it's just women only. And it's, there's one theme of the retreat, which is kind of using Mary as a model of sorts. Okay. Obviously the Blessed Mother has a certain place of quasi honor in the Quran. Okay. So they were, she's incorporated and into this retreat as one of the models. Okay. Which is weird all in itself. And one of the sublines from the actual website of the retreat was declaring that Mary was a Palestinian woman who gave birth under occupation. Okay. So the New York Post asked my opinion, say, hey, what do you think about this whole thing? Do you think that Mary, the Blessed Mother, was a Palestinian woman who gave birth under occupation? Okay. I was like, okay, you want me to comment on that, which is kind of ironic because I actually did the interview about Our Lady from Our Lady's Shrine here in Champion, Wisconsin. So I was like, okay, let's talk about Mary. Let's go for it. And I started off the interview and they asked me like, okay, what do you think? I said, well, historically, I assume you don't disagree with this point, Michael. Yeah, Mary was under occupation. Okay.
Occupation by whom?
By the Roman Empire.
What about by the Herodian kingdom? Herod was an illegitimate ruler. So occupied by whom?
Right. Well, there you go. At least she was under occupation for sure. That is why in the very first, and the report, I kind of was almost like surprised at first. She kind of like pushed back, said like, wait a second, not really. I'm like, yeah, really. That's why they went to Bethlehem in the first place, because they were under a mandate to leave Nazareth, go to Bethlehem, and get counted for a census. They had to obey the ruler of the occupying force. Fair enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, but I knew here's, and this is where it kind of got sticky because they, I understand why Rama is trying to make this point. She's trying to make the point that, Palestine, free Palestine, whatever. Okay. That being said, this is where I said, I was clear with the report. I said, look, 100%, I want to make it clear. As a leader of a Catholic organization, we are sounding the alarm nonstop, as you guys are at Lepanto, about the invasion of Islam into American society and how that's not going to bode well long term. Okay, we know that. At the same time, here's where I do agree with. She was trying to make a point. Yeah, the Israelis have invaded parts of Palestine, like the Gaza Strip, and it's an occupied state right now, occupied country. Okay, I said in that part, I agree with it because there is a genocide going on in Gaza, which the Holy Father, Cardinal Pizzaballa, continued to call out. There's been an undue response to the October 7th attack. Hundreds of thousands of people are dying, as Jason Jones, our friend, continues to underscore and highlight. So, yeah, that part, I do agree with that. When I said that, I could tell there was not happy receptivity on the other end of the line, right? Because I think they wanted me just to tow the boat and just say bad Islam, bad Islam, bad Islam, rah, 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 U.S. Judeo-Christian roots of this country, and that's it. But that's not the truth, okay? Number one, Mary, so in one sense, yeah, Mary was born under occupation, okay? And I said, I don't know if they're actually going to include this, but my point was the boy that Mary gave birth to became the new Israel. His church became the new Israel, and he was killed by those authorities way back. So we'll see what actually makes it out if they include my quote, but I think I answered that well. Would you disagree with that analysis, Mike?
Well, no, I think you answered just fine. The thing that I would have said is that, Judea, which is where Bethlehem and all those other territories within what is now currently called Palestine, had been called Palestine until it was called Israel. All of those territories were they weren't occupied territories. They were subjects of the Roman Empire. The reason that they went to be counted is because they were actual subjects of the Roman Empire, not occupied, individual subjects that were under an occupied territory like Germany occupying France. It's not the same thing. And you can't apply a modern understanding to that kind of thing. It's not the same thing. But, you know, when we look at this, people try to politicize that particular event, the census, and then, of course, the flight into Egypt, because of Herod, not because of the Roman Empire, because of Herod, who wanted to kill the children. And they say that, well, they became refugees, except that Egypt was also subject to the Roman Empire. It was part of the Roman Empire. It wasn't some different territory. It was part of the same empire. It would be like going from West Virginia to Kentucky. You know, it's not two different occupations. So that's part of the problem. But they try to apply this this modern take to it so that they can make a case that, well, you know, our Lord was a refugee, and so therefore, if you don't treat refugees the same way that our Lord would have been treated when he went into Egypt, then therefore you're somehow hating on the Holy Family, and you're hating on our Lord, and that's just not the case, because they're comparing apples and oranges, and it's kind of a ridiculous argument, and I'm kind of tired of it too.
It's been recycled over and over again. And yes, I mean, I think that's a great point too, as well. Just understanding it's actually almost, instead of a crossing of a country like US and Canada, it's more like West Virginia to Kentucky, essentially. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yep.
Point taken. So we'll see again what comes out, and just understand the nuances of what they wanted in that interview. And I think it's important just to be, again, whenever we have to speak up for our faith, just be clear, like, this is what we think. And we're not just going to follow one line of thought, hook, line, and sinker, just because it's the right way to go. Which may be actually a time to bring in just quickly the whole SSPX thing, okay? Mm-hmm. And that's been such a kind of a moment of really sadness, ultimately, okay, for what's going on. You had the bishops who went ahead and did the consecration of 4 new bishops on July 1st in Switzerland, despite repeated warnings from the Vatican. Cardinal Fernandez, head of the Dicastery of the Faith, was the person in charge of negotiation. You know, I mean, Michael, you and I both basically agree on the same fundamental line. I mean, I am, it's a paradox what's going on in the church today, right? You have, on one hand, you have the Vatican, which has ceded the power to the Chinese Communist Party to name bishops. That's just literally happening. Okay. And they're just very bold about it. Even when remember in the interregnum period when Pope Francis died, when the church was kind of asleep in some ways, they went ahead and named 2 of their bishops just to get 2 in the slot there. And, you know, the Vatican had to, okay, I guess we accept who you've consecrated. So the Vatican allows that in the secret China-Vatican deal agreement, which has really destroyed the underground church there. And at the same token, you have the SSPX on its face, like, you know, with reasons they want to protect the faith, they declare it's a state of emergency, and therefore they need to go ahead and consecrate their bishops, right? You have the Vatican, which turns around and excommunicates them. Okay, so it's
and, you know, let's add to this the complexity of the situation with the Chinese Catholic bishops, because when you look at the fact that these Chinese Catholic bishops that are being consecrated with Rome's tacit approval, the real problem is that those bishops don't have an allegiance to Rome. They have an allegiance to Beijing, and their entire allegiance to the Communist Party is directed towards making sure that Catholics are nationalist, patriotic. So the Catholic Patriotic Church of China, they're supposed to be patriots of China, which means they're supposed to be good members of the Communist Party, which means they're supposed to be loyal to Mao. That's really at the heart of the problem, because now you've got these Chinese bishops who aren't just being approved by Rome, but in a very real sense, they are also heretics, because what they are doing is elevating the Communist Party and communist ideologies, which are antithetical to Catholic teaching, and placing them above what the church actually teaches. So it's a very grave, very serious problem. And for Rome to sit there and kind of turn a blind eye and say, oh no, it's just because we're trying to maintain diplomatic relations. And no, this is not about diplomatic relations. It's about the salvation of souls. And stop playing politics and look at the very, very real situation where these bishops are leading souls to hell. So for them to, you know, give a pass to these communist bishops while then turning around and saying that what the SSPX is doing is completely disobedient to Rome is well, it's hypocritical for one thing.
So why are you against the SSPX doing what they did on July 1st by going to have the consecrations?
Well, because you don't fight disobedience with disobedience. And the fact of the matter is that they were denied the mandate to consecrate these bishops, and the canon law was very clear. If you do this without a mandate, you are ipso facto excommunicated. The irony is that the excommunications that were applied to this particular code of canon law was to prevent what the Chinese Communist Party is doing with those communist bishops. So it's just terribly and painfully ironic.
Even more so ironic is the person that the Vatican chose to handle the negotiation, Cardinal Fernandez, Tucho Fernandez, who is one of the greatest scandals of the Pope Leo pontificate so far, is the fact that he's still in charge of the dicastery for the faith. This is the man, among other things, who wrote that 1996 book, Saname con tu boca, which is Heal Me with Your Mouth, which is filled with just pornographic images. You just one account of a young woman kind of fantasizing about Jesus on the shore of Lake Tiberias, and just and that's in writing. And he's gone on the record afterwards saying, "I don't regret writing that book." Okay, so this is the man in charge of handling these back and forth. And I wish Pope Leo had personally met with the members of the SSPX. I'm not sure exactly why that never happened. I think it would have been gone a long way. I think a lot can be solved when there's like just face-to-face interactions. But what do you make, Michael, of the whole? They would counter, of course, that it's a state of an emergency. Because there's a state of an emergency, therefore it justifies us disobeying. There you have on the right is the leader of the SSPX, and then you have Cardinal Fernandez. So what do you say to that, Michael?
So if you understand canon law, the canon law doesn't exonerate them of what happened with the consecrations. It doesn't say that you can therefore do it and it's justified. What it does is it mitigates the punishment. So it still allows for the punishment to be enacted, but it says that there is a possibility of mitigation. The problem for them in this regard is that the Pope is the highest judicial authority in the church. And so if the Pope decrees it, if the Pope condemns something, or if the Pope makes a declaration about their condition, there is no higher authority for them to appeal to. So even from a canonical standpoint, there's no standing. There's no way that they can then say, well, it's because of this we can make this appeal. Well, it's an appeal for canon law, and the highest authority of the church said you are excommunicated. So where do you go? How can you then say that the excommunication isn't valid?
Father Ripperger had a great point too. I think he was talking with Tim Gordon about just what does the state of emergency actually mean, and he was underscoring that term in itself. There's very little, there hasn't been a clear precedent in church history about what the state of emergency mean and what you can do during that time, right? It's scanned information, and at the very basic level, it almost meets the level of imprudence. If you're the SSPX and saying, okay, we think that it's such a dire situation that we think that the Novus Ordo Mass is invalid. Our people can't reach the sacraments. Therefore, we are going to have to break with Rome, get excommunication from the Pope, because we're putting all of our chips on this fact. Okay, that is almost imprudent. Like, you're risking potentially your eternal salvation based off, something that there hasn't been a lot of precedent for. Okay, so it puts you in a very dangerous position, which is what the SSPX has done. So it's a sad thing, and I think it's going to do a lot of damage for the church, unity of the church.
I agree. I think that it's definitely sad, and I take issue with a lot of the people that are celebrating and saying, "Oh, it's about time." No, that's not the way that we should. That's not the disposition we should have. The fact that our brethren has been separated from us should be an extremely sad thing, and we should be viewing it in the same way as one of our siblings being cut off from the family, and we should be yearning and praying for their reunification with the family. That's the proper disposition for Catholics to have in this regard.
and the desire for the full use of excommunication upon all other members who are openly making a mockery of the faith, like Father James Martin, because we want his soul to be brought into the fold as well. He's just as much outside the fold in a lot of ways as these SSPX members. Okay, so yeah, it's a situation. Again, we would pray for the unity of the church that they may all be one, ut unum sint, as Christ said at the Last Supper. Let's go to just another topic here. Shawn Ryan, Candace Owens, two of the world's largest podcasters. They have to be in the top 10 in the world, so their platforms are enormous, okay, and the people that they reach. And it's they had a joint interview together. It was 4 hours long. It's gotten like 6 million views already in about a week, okay? So many people have seen it. They said a lot of interesting things about different topics, Candace's life, Charlie Kirk, all that stuff. I want to go in and zero in the fact that these two individuals, both of them are Catholic, talked about, they discussed Catholic politicians and Freemasonry's anti-Catholic history. Interesting, okay? Shawn Ryan's interview with fellow podcaster Candace Owens has attained almost 6 million views. Shawn Ryan's a former Navy SEAL and CIA contractor, and he launched his podcast, The Shawn Ryan Show, in 2019. He grew up Catholic and has hosted notable Catholic figures, including Father Chad Ripperger, Father Dan Rehill, and Father Stephen Gadberry. You ever watched Shawn Ryan or no?
Yeah, I watched his interview for the first. The first interview I ever saw with him was the one with Father Ripperger.
Oh, nice. Which also I think is one of his highest netting interviews of all time on his show. So people were very interested, obviously, in the whole spiritual warfare thing, and great show to watch. The two discussed potential GOP presidential nominees for 2028 in question whether Vice President J.D. Vance would be able to escape the ramifications of the Iran war in order to secure the nomination. I don't see how Vance gets around what happened in Iran. I don't see how Vance is able to talk his way out of it, Owen stated. Well, I'm going to tell you how. All these Catholics are really leaning into being Catholic right now because it's the fastest growing denomination in the world, said Ryan. Discussing the controversy. What do you think about that, by the way? That these Catholic politicians are they leaning too much into their faith or not enough in their faith?
No, I think that here's the problem. The secular world has been telling us for decades that there has to be this separation of church and state, which means that you're supposed to check your Catholic identity at the door when you walk through the hallowed halls of political whatever. But the real issue is that they're not leaning enough into their faith, and they should be leaning on their faith to inform their policy decisions. And I think that when you have individuals like J.D. Vance identifying himself not only as a Catholic, but then saying, I rely on my Catholic faith to inform my policy decisions, I think that that's really the way he ought to go. And that's the way every Catholic politician ought to go. Otherwise, you wind up with Nancy Pelosi and John Kerry and all those other monsters who are out there pushing abortion and contraception and LGBT ideologies, saying, well, I'm a faithful Catholic, but I have to go with what my constituents want. That's false. You can't. It's almost like saying, well, I'm an actor and I can be involved in this sex scene on screen because it's my character that's doing that, not me. Well, you can't separate you from your action. So
I think Shawn's, he's, I don't know how well of a Catholic he is. Maybe he is really follows the faith. It strikes me that he maybe not so much into the everyday flow of the events of the Catholic Church. So he's seen this a bit from the outside, like, okay, this is, JD's and others maybe tapping in their faith. Like, how are they sincere about it? Are they really fighting for it? Because I think he'd love to see, and I totally agree with him, if these people who identify as Catholics would speak up stronger on other issues that are going on in society, right? Human trafficking, for instance, is a big thing for Shawn Ryan, and I love that, right? He in his mind, it's like he sees very little people on the DC, scene, like speaking up for the victims of the Epstein files, right? So that's Shawn's point, and I fully agree with him there, and I love that. Towards the end of the interview, Owens brought up Freemasonry and its historical impact on events around the world. It's always been a war against the Catholic Church, he said. They're all explicit in their hatred of the Catholic Church, which is very compelling to me. Let's play a clip from Candace talking about that whole Freemasonry element.
I guess Freemasonry, in many ways, obviously, it traces back. It's biblical. So you have to think about different iterations. So it's like Solomon's temple, the masons of the temple is kind of what they're hinting at. But in terms of like the modern introduction into Western society, it begins with Francis Bacon and Paris, where Paris seems to be the home of a lot of the things that have happened in these secret societies. It's like they go to Paris to be initiated. The same thing for Sigmund Freud. He studied under Charcot, and he was similarly initiated. I don't think it's a coincidence that Paris's code is 33. If you want to dial up to Paris, it's 33. It's home of the French Revolution. There's a lot that has happened in Paris. There's a lot of evil that is taken place. But the Freemason Society, I mean, this gets into the infiltration of the Knights Templar, an intentional infiltration by Adam Weishaupt, who was funding the infiltration of various Freemason groups and bringing them all together under the Illuminati. Our founding fathers were Freemasons, and the Nicholas Hager book carefully walks you through even the symbolism on the back of a $1 bill. And to be clear, when they joined the Illuminati, it was after the Revolutionary War, but it was always done in mind, and Adam Weishaupt was an open Satanist, with using Christianity as a shell to further their satanic causes. So you have to really go backward to understand the theology, the infiltration, how the Scottish Rite, which is the Scottish Rite Freemasons, which had everything to do with establishing America, was really dating back from France, and the Catholic Church having Jacques de Molay hung. I think he was hung. He was killed. And these groups then went into Scotland, and that book just helps you trace how these Freemason groups arrived into America. And for them, it was seen as a new Atlantis. Okay. We keep getting caught doing all this crazy stuff across the European continent. It's always been a war against the Catholic Church. They're all explicit in their hatred of the Catholic Church, which is very compelling to me. It's
Why do you think they're against the Catholics so much?
Because the Catholics were calling them what they were, Satanists. I mean, the rewrite of history, Isabella of Spain, she should be sainted. They're constantly, everything you've learned about Catholicism and the history of Catholicism is just crap in school. And there's a reason for that, because America was designed to be anti-Catholic, to be anti-Orthodox. And the reason is because Catholics hold the history. They know what they were doing on that continent. America is supposed to be kept fat, happy, and young. I truly believe that.
Comments on that, Michael?
Well, she's absolutely right that Freemasonry has been completely counter to Catholic teaching since its founding. The Catholic Church, there are 11 popes that have issued 17 total pronouncements on the incompatibility of Freemasonry with Catholicism, and that's since Pope Clement XII's Apostolic Constitution In Eminenti Apostolatus. And that was from 1738. So 1738, the very first Freemasonic lodge was publicly instituted in 1717. Doesn't mean that Freemasons didn't exist prior to 1717. It just means that was the first time they they made their presence and their reality known to the public. But there are, as I said, there are 17 total pronouncements going all the way up to very recent pronouncements. So this is one of the most consistently and publicly condemned ideologies and organizations in church history, but it's not just Freemasonry. A lot of people will sit there and say, well, Freemasons were condemned and but it's all such secret societies, and they go by many, many different names. And one of the reasons that socialism is so thoroughly condemned is because it is repeatedly identified with Masonic ideologies and with Freemasonic organizations. You have the testimony of Friedrich Engels when he was talking about the commission to write the Communist Manifesto. He said very pointedly that Karl Marx was contacted by lodges in London, a lodge calling itself the League of the Just, or the League of Just Men, and that they commissioned Karl Marx to write the Communist Manifesto as an outward expression of what they had already interiorly decided that they wanted to complete. So the communist
let's back there. So you're saying that the actual Masonic lodges in England basically task Karl Marx and Engels to write the Communist Manifesto, essentially?
Yes.
So originally, they basically hired authors to basically write their program of
revolution,
chain of revolution through this.
That's right.
This is their constitution.
Yes.
So the Masonic Constitution is the Communist Manifesto.
That's correct.
That's very illuminating all in itself. Keep going there with your point.
So if you understand Freemasonry properly, you can find this in multiple documents and communications that have been written by Freemasons to Freemasons. They talk about how they want to overturn and abolish Christian law, Christian property, Christian family. They want to overturn the nature of the Christian religion itself, so that they can then institute Masonic law, Masonic family, Masonic property. And it all becomes communal. And all of these communal elements are what communism is. It's the external expression of the internal form of Freemasonry. That's what we're looking at. And you'll find over the decades that a lot of these revolutionist movements were fomented by Freemasons and then expressed as communist, Marxist, collectivist revolutions. The French Revolution was one. The communist revolution in Russia was one. But then you've also got revolutions that took place in South America repeatedly, these Marxist revolutions, but they were fomented by Freemasons. Even what happened in Germany, the rise of Adolf Hitler. Hitler was put into power by members of the Thule Society. The Thule Society had strong connections to Freemasons. And what happened, this happens repeatedly whenever these dictators come into power, one of the first things they do is go after the lodges, because they know that the lodges have the power to overturn them, to overthrow them. So they get rid of them so that they can secure their power. So it's really the irony of how these revolutions work. But yeah, you've got these secret societies that are working to create these revolutions within various civil societies and also within the Catholic Church. They want to overturn the church, or at least use it to implement and foment their ideologies. And that's how they operate.
What does the church mean, by the way, of secret societies?
So the church's idea of a secret society is there are multiple layers to it, because it's not just a society that has secrets, but that they keep their actions, their agendas secret, and that they bind themselves through blood oaths to each other. And of course, Scripture fully condemns blood oaths of this magnitude, which is one of the reasons why Freemasonry is condemned. But what it also does is it establishes a hierarchy that makes your blood oath and your secret pact superior to anything on the external forum. So if it's in the realm of politics, you have a blood oath with the Freemasons that say you have to go in and do X, Y, or Z. That is your oath. That's what you promised to do. Then your oath supersedes whatever oath you took for public office. And you have an obligation then through your blood oath to implement those policies that were decided upon behind closed doors. And that also holds true for your faith. If the secret society decides that they want to implement policies that are against church teaching or somehow blasphemous or sacrilegious, you have an obligation to implement those policies, even if they go against your own personal faith.
It's that's extremely telling. You just even the Masonic influence in the Catholic Church alone, how they've actually crossed the inside the walls. So, Bella Dodd's testimony too of how many of that infiltration, and I think it's I think people like New Conference, like Candace, Shawn, Ryan, to a degree, they're kind of waking up, and they've experienced evil in a powerful way in their own lives, and they're kind of like stepping back now and looking at like who's behind it all. That's always the question. Ultimately, it's obviously the devil, right? He's the one who wants our souls in hell for eternity. But kind of putting names to these faces, and again, it's what a grace it is for us just to turn to the church and just to see, going back to 1738, which you mentioned, when the Pope, the Holy Father, first issued a statement against Freemasonry, calling out what it was. And then later, of course, against communism. I think we had our first statement against communism even before the manifesto came out, if I remember. Like the first encyclical of Pius IX. I think it was like 1856. So it came out. Our first condemnation of communism was before the manifesto came out. In fact, check me on that. But it's so again,
yeah, the first formal papal condemnation of communism was issued by Pius IX in November of 1846. So that would have been, and he explicitly warned the church about that infamous doctrine of so-called communism.
And the manifesto was it 2 years later, 1848?
48, yeah.
So there you go, 2 years. We were ahead of the curve there. We could see it from a long way off. It's just like that church also has that ability just to see into the future, similar to what Paul VI did with his encyclical, help me out, against contraception in 69, 68, Humanae Vitae. Right? Mm-hmm. He showed what would happen to society if we accepted contraception, and this is exactly what had happened. Okay, so the church's mother, the church's protector. That's why it's like so important. Yes, we can speak up against maybe what this bishop, this Holy Father is doing, whatever. But I think it's so important to pray for them as well. We need these visible heads of unity. If not, we disintegrate. Okay. One tradition here at the shrine that I thought has been awesome. They do this thing called the Shepherd Project, where every Sunday from it's May to October, they do a different bishop. They just name the bishop, or it's a different every day maybe, and they choose every day. They name one bishop in this country, and they specifically all pray at the end of Mass for this bishop. Right? I think it's just it's kind of like a visible sign, action of praying for these men. We need them. We need the heads of the church. Final comments, Michael, as you kind of wrap up this show here.
Well, I mean, I don't know what else to add to this other than, I mean, if we're going to talk about the communism and the Freemasonry and that sort of thing, well, it's not, as I said, it's not just Freemasonry. You've also got other institutions. I'll name a few: Skull and Bones, Scrolling Key, Wolf's Head. These are all
these institutions that the church is actually named out by name?
No, but these are Masonically affiliated organizations. They're similar in nature. They take certain blood oaths. They've got a very similar structure to Freemasonry. Even so, the church in her condemnations of Freemasonry, she names Freemasonry, but she also names and other similar secret societies. So these other organizations would fall under that condemnation. The Bavarian Illuminati, the current iteration of the Knights Templar. You've got Rosicrucianism, the Carbonari, the Thule Society, I had already mentioned, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. So, you've got a whole bunch of different organizations like the Odd Fellows, the Knights of Pythias, the Elk, Moose, Eagle Lodges, which are similar to Freemasons, even if I don't know that they take oaths or not, but those other institutions, I would be very skeptical and very discerning about those institutions. I know that the Rotary clubs are definitely affiliated with Freemasonry, so you have to stay away from those also. But you have to be clear that these societies, which claim to be philanthropic or even humanitarian societies. They aren't. They hide behind humanitarian language, but their ultimate goal is to institute this globalist socialist ideology, and you have to stay far away from it.
The key factor is, do they have a vertical dimension? They're very horizontal. They're very fraternal. And the defining thing is, do they have a vertical, meaning do they go up to God as Father, right? Who's incarnated Jesus Christ, right? The Son of the Father. So that's the key kind of thing and to look for. And just ending on a positive note, we're going to release a show later this week, kind of where I've been this past few days. I was in Champion, Wisconsin, because the Shrine had called, it was Catholic Saints of America Week. That's what they titled it. It's from the 1st to the 9th of July. And they looked across the United States and said, what can we do to celebrate the anniversary? And they, came up with a list of dozens of men and women who are either already saints or who are on the path to canonization, the formal process of recognition in the Catholic Church. And they started to call all these different heads of representatives of these different causes. And they said, come to Champion, Wisconsin, come and give an exposition, have the table display, whatever. And they ended up getting 76 different reps here, okay, from all these different men and women, okay. And I was here on site. Our team was here. We covered it. We interviewed a bunch of the postulators, people affiliated with the causes, and there were relics of all these different individuals. I got to tell you, Michael, I mean, just like there are so many people in America that we barely even know about that have had causes actually opened up. And this is not even the complete list. They were clear about that. They said there's actually a lot more out there who couldn't come for whatever reason. So, and this is talking about the whole rewrite of history too, to a degree, which Candace and Shawn were going into, like, whoever writes history, the victor writes the history. Our own Catholic history has been kind of in the shadows to it, especially in America here. We have some very strong men and women, and I think God's kind of pushing these people into the limelight right now, today in 2026. And we're in the show. We'll release it maybe tomorrow. We'll interview some of these people again you've never heard about, which are truly inspiring. I'll leave you with just one. This is the last person that we interviewed. That's from OSV. Okay, they took that shot. They wrote that article. I was actually interviewing one of the priests of the Shrine who dressed up as George Washington for the day. And but let's maybe, if you have another picture of me interviewing, like maybe the other postulator, that's also good to show. But the one I ran into at the end was a guy by the name of he's already passed away, but his representatives. I paused her. That shot right there. So that's direct descendant. I think it's her husband's brother's dad is Father Verbis Lafleur. Okay, he was a chaplain priest in the Second World War, Japanese or prisoner of war in Japan for 2.5 years, enduring insane suffering. He was on a prison ship right off the coast of the Philippines, and he was torpedoed actually by an American sub, because we didn't know that it was our prisoner of war ship. And the last memories of people of Father Verbis are him pushing people out the hatch to escape safety before his own. And I think there were like 500 prisoners of war on that ship, and 80 were able to swim ashore, but Father went down with the ship. So
wow,
it's he's a servant of God. He's gotten 2 distinguished service crosses, and just to be able to sit down and talk to that, she's like 80 years old right there. She had such love. That woman had the face of an angel, and just hear directly from these people who've been touched by saints. Again, it's just for us here at Catholic, it was the best way to spend our 4th of July celebration. And that's servant of God. You ever heard about this guy, Michael? His name is Black Elk.
No.
Black Elk was what's the name of the tribe? Not the Sioux. I'm forgetting the tribe there in Lakota tribe in South Dakota. Little Bighorn at the Battle of Wounded Knee. 1891. These are all obviously historic events. He knew Sitting Bull. Okay. He becomes a Christian Catholic afterwards, like in the early 1900s, becomes a catechist, trained in New York City, goes back and trains the Indians. He had a great love for the Blessed Mother, taught people the rosary, everything. And that guy's like a descendant as well from him. He's a deacon and he's a descendant of Black Held. So again,
Wow.
pretty crazy. Again, last person say it is Irving Charles Ulay. He was known as Francis. Okay. He's a servant of God. So he's already had some sort of recognition in the church. He received the stigmata and he died in 2009 he's from Upper Michigan. And I was able to talk to Michael. Get this. Imagine if you're going to your local church and one day an old man comes up to you and says, come back to the sacristy. And they bring him back to this. They go to the sacristy with this old man and he shows him his hands. Okay. And his hands have, you can kind of see there he is. The individual, that's Francis. He had the stigmata. He had the stigmata for about 15 years.
Wow.
And, it's, I was able to talk to these individuals who knew him. They were in the church. Again, they were the ones that Francis showed the stigmata to. So they said, yeah, it's like, well, is this guy like a normal person? Yeah, absolutely. He was married, had kids, was a business owner, World War II veteran. Okay. And, just had a real simplicity of life and nothing fancy, and just lived his life and offered up and from 12 to 3 a.m. he would experience the passion. Ended up being almost every night before his death. So again, I'll end with that positive note. We are in this country, but this is just a trampoline into the next life, which is heaven. That trampoline, which gives us the springs, is our Catholic faith, our sacraments. We need the sacraments to get to heaven. So let's keep focused on that. Thank you all for the show, and we'll see you next time, same place. God bless you all, and fight on.